So Helen, thanks so much for joining me for this podcast episode, when we're going to dive into more about coaching and your story and a bit more about highly sensitive people. Um, yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. Um, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story or experience of being a highly sensitive person. Um, what was that kind of journey of discovery and growth like for you?
I don't know when I first came across the term highly sensitive person. I did do a degree in psychology, and I think I probably read articles about highly sensitive people and thought, oh yeah, that's me, but didn't really do anything with that information. When I was growing up, looking back, I can see all the signs were there.
Mhm.
I definitely identified as an introvert, and I know that being highly sensitive and introversion are different things,
Mm.
but sometimes they can go hand in hand. I preferred quieter situations. I liked interacting one-to-one with people. I loved spending time in nature, just like admiring a flower,
Yeah.
or or looking at the different colors of grass and different patches, and and just taking things in at a really like deep level.
Mm.
um, and I think probably people would have described me as a sensitive child, um, but I didn't see any advantage to that or any value to that. It was like almost like, oh, you're too sensitive.
Mm.
And so I kind of tried not to be, and I tried to fit in with what I thought other people kind of wanted from me. And so I had all these like intense feelings about things, but I didn't really kind of have a way of processing them. And and I kind of felt like I shouldn't be having all these deep feelings. And so for a while that kind of led me into some fairly like self-destructive behavior. And then after a while, my parents bought me a guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and I found a real outlet for my deep feeling in playing my guitar.
Mm.
um, I think that can be a real outlet for musicians.
Yeah.
uh, but I also, I just kind of squished away a lot of what I was feeling, and I tried to, as I say, kind of fit in with what I thought other people wanted me to be.
Mm.
And I felt quite responsible for how other people were feeling around me. If somebody else was upset, then I kind of felt like it was my job to make them happy. So kind of all of this was going on.
Mm.
And I remember at school we did a personality test, and I was like way at the extreme of being an introvert. uh, and that, but some of that was probably around my sensitivity, that I did find lots of people overwhelming. But it wasn't measuring that aspect of things. So I just kind of got on with my life. And it really wasn't until I left the corporate world a few years ago to retrain as a coach.
Mm.
And I was already on a journey of self-discovery by that point, but I just reconnected with, oh yeah, I remember identifying as a highly sensitive person, and this is something that I want to explore more now.
Mm.
So it's only been in the last few years that I guess I've really dived into that and began to kind of honor it more in my life,
Mm.
and not try and ignore it or
Yeah.
kind of live despite it. Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I guess one question that comes to my mind is you mentioned honoring your sensitivity, and I wondered,
Mm.
what does that look like? How does that kind of, yeah, how does that like become a reality for you at the moment?
Oh, so for me, it's partly about making time to do things that bring me joy and bring me energy.
Hmm.
So, for example, going and spending time in nature, going out for walks and taking it in, having a dance around my living room
Mm.
just because I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, singing, like just things that really bring me energy and joy, and not exposing myself to situations that are going to drain me. So for example, I do, for example, like to go to the occasional party,
Hmm.
but I know that if I go to a party, I will be good for maybe a couple of hours, and then I will need to leave.
Yeah.
I will need to leave and be on my own. And but as I say, like before, I wouldn't have honored that. I'd have thought, what's the matter with me? I'm with all these exciting people, and I should stay.
Mm.
But now I know what my limits are, and and I I guess I'm better at taking care of myself,
Mm.
basically, like knowing what is okay for me and what isn't okay for me. And that has been, I suppose, a big part of my self-development journey, is about developing boundaries,
Mm.
um, because my background is that I was in an abusive marriage,
Mm.
and when I came out of that, I realized that I had weak to non-existent boundaries in a lot of areas,
Mm.
um, and that and that has, learning about boundaries and learning how to communicate them and implement them has really transformed my life.
Mm.
Yeah
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, this theme of self-care and boundaries feels so important, especially
mm.
when you have a kind of high sensitivity to other people and what's going on around you. This idea of, being able to look after yourself. And what comes to my mind is like, it's not selfish to do that. It's
Mm.
it's actually, a form of self-care and self-love,
Mm.
to be looking after yourself in that way. So it's great that you've been on this journey of learning and discovery and growth, with your own sensitivity. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah
Yeah. um,
yeah because growing up, I really felt that it was selfish to focus on myself,
mm,
and I really thought it was a good thing to always be giving my attention to other people and what they needed and what they wanted. Um, but of course, that meant I wasn't taking care of myself.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. And of course, with that, I had low self-esteem. And so it was kind of a vicious cycle, really.
yeah.
Um, so it's working on all those different levels, on the kind of as you say, like, learning to love yourself, how to build boundaries, how to interact with the world in a way that is okay for you. Yeah.
mm, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Mm.
um, and that kind of brings me on to the next question, which was what inspired you to become a coach? and to work with others on their sensitivities and their boundaries. What inspired you?
Originally, several people suggested to me that I would make a good coach.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working in human resources, and I ignored them for a while because, you know, I had a career, and it was interesting. But as I kind of looked into, you know, what coaching was about, I realized that it would really suit me. You know, I love that kind of that one-to-one interaction, and listening to people's stories and reflecting back, and helping people kind of develop their own awareness and to grow. I love all of that. So it made sense to me. And initially I thought, well, I will train as a coach with a view to, you know, maybe being a career coach, because that sat well with my background in HR.
Yeah.
But, you know, as I'm sure you know, when you become a coach, you go on your own journey of self-discovery and personal growth. And I realized that if I'm going to really do this, I need to do it about something that I'm really passionate about. And for me, that is really helping women who are stuck, I guess, in the similar place to I was several years ago. This feeling of I'm giving and giving and giving so much, and I never feel like I'm getting back what I give. So really helping, you know, women that say yes to everyone else all the time, and never kind of then look after themselves. So I don't specifically look to work with highly sensitive people.
Yeah.
But I do find that we probably attract each other because we have that, you know, some shared understanding, some shared experience. And it's also, I think, that a lot of highly sensitive people and empaths struggle with boundaries. Like maybe they haven't experienced healthy boundaries growing up, and it causes us to get into patterns of interacting with the world that, you know, that maybe did help us at one point in our lives, but then they don't serve us now. And they hold us back and keep us in a cycle of, you know, being exhausted. Yeah,
that's really powerful. It reminds me a bit of this a bit of content in a book I read. It was because you mentioned you work with women, and so I've seen a little bit of this boundary setting in the context of men as well. And there's this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. About,
yes.
I don't know if you know it. Yeah, it's about.
Oh yes.
Right, it's about kind of, you know, recovering from people pleasing and setting boundaries and intentions and things. And he uses this example of some work he does with men where he puts a bit of string on the floor and says, right, this is the boundary. Tell me when to stop. And he approaches the client and, you know, steps over the line and then gets closer and closer until they say stop. And what's interesting is a lot of people that he worked with would let him cross the boundary of the rope and then come really, really close. And then he talks to them about, you know, why did they allow him to cross the boundary in the first place? And then they have a kind of discussion and exploration around that. And I thought that was such a nice, tangible illustration of, you know, where someone's mindset can be if they haven't worked on or learned or had any help with this issue of boundaries that you work with your clients. And how important it is, really.
That is a great example because it demonstrates it so beautifully. You know, it's easier to see a physical boundary, isn't it?
Mm.
It's like, you know, yes,
Yeah.
you've definitely crossed a line because I can see you've crossed a line.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we are not always so familiar with boundaries in different areas of our lives. So for example, you know, that you get boundaries in basically every area of your life. But for example, you know, you have time boundaries. So, you know, is it that we give all of our time to other people? Is it that, for example, you know, as a coach, that you, I don't know, you end up spending 3 hours with a client when you only meant to spend one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, or, you know, are you always checking your emails or your work phone, and, you know, you don't have kind of a boundary between your work and your home life?
Mm-hmm.
And then there are, a big one, I think, for sensitive people is emotional boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
This was like such a revelation to me. was, you know, the fact that, oh, actually, like, my emotions are my emotions, and, you know, that's my stuff. And
Mm.
then your emotions are your emotions, and, you know, I don't need to be feeling all of your emotions.
Yeah.
And there is, you know, there is a difference there. You know, there should be like a boundary between us. And sometimes that boundary isn't there, and then we, you know, we get exhausted by like feeling what other people are feeling, and then feeling responsible for what they're feeling, and then maybe going into, you know, fix it mode, because,
Yeah.
you know, that's really uncomfortable, let me help you with that. So it's not only been kind of really helpful for me to learn about boundaries for myself, it's helped me as a coach. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then yeah, working with my clients too.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And with working with your clients, have you, you mentioned a bit about it, but have you, you know, what have you learned from coaching clients and sensitive people? You know, are there any kinds of patterns or challenges or opportunities that you've noticed that keep coming up for people, or is, you know, is everyone different, or are there kind of trends that you've noticed?
Mm. I think with the sensitive people that I've worked with, one pattern that I notice is overwhelm,
Mm.
just particularly with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
um, just that there's so much to unpack, and
Yeah.
because, you know, they're feeling everything very deeply,
Yeah.
and so, you know, knowing, no, so one of the things we might work on is how to feel your feelings, how to process them,
Mm.
um, how to kind of understand what's going on, um, but then, you know, finding ways for them to manage that and to build emotional boundaries. And there are kind of, you know, different techniques for that. So that's
Mm.
one pattern.
Yeah.
Another is, I guess, like the pattern that I got into, which was really like people pleasing.
Yeah.
That, you know, that we feel like we have to conform with what other people expect from us, and because we feel what other people are feeling quite often, or we think we do, then we kind of lose that reference to ourselves. So we can get stuck in a people pleasing pattern, and also, yeah, lose that kind of that connection with ourselves. So, I mean, it's there, but, you know, I find quite a few people that they don't kind of have this sense of like their own core,
Mm.
because they've been referencing other people so much.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so those are like, yeah, some of the challenges that I see.
Yeah, those are big ones. They're so interesting as well, aren't they? So this idea
Mm.
of overwhelm because you're feeling things so deeply, is a big one, I think.
Mm.
And helping people to, as you mentioned, process and understand what's going on for them so they can find a healthy way through it.
Mm.
That really resonates. Yeah. So
Mm.
I wondered, are there any kind of tools or resources that you'd recommend through your work? You mentioned there are some techniques
Mm.
that you sometimes work with. I don't know which bits make sense to share, but yeah, just curious or interested if there are anything you'd recommend for clients and for sensitive people.
Mm. Well, coaching,
Yeah.
of course, because I think it's a beautiful way to explore,
Mm,
what is going on in this kind of rich inner world
yeah.
that a
Yeah.
lot of sensitive people have, and to help them kind of make sense of it, help them to tune into their intuition
Hmm.
and tune into their true self. And also, coaching is a great way to tackle the inner critic.
Right.
Quite often, again, actually, that's I guess another issue is kind of is carrying a lot of judgment
Mm,
of ourselves, and so coaching is a wonderful way to learn ways of quietening that inner critic and dialing up your inner cheerleader.
hmm. Yeah.
I love it. I love it for
Yeah.
that.
Love that.
Um,
Mm,
and then, apart from coaching, one wonderful resource that I learned about was using mindfulness and meditation,
mhm,
um, which captures a lot of different aspects. So it can help with, for example, tuning into your emotions and processing them. It can help with reducing that overthinking and that over analysis.
mm,
Like, it can help quieten your mind, and it can help you learn to control your thoughts more
mhm.
so that they serve you rather than going against you. It can help with self-soothing. Um, it's just I'm a big fan, as you can tell. I've just found it incredibly helpful myself, and so I use that with clients too.
Yeah.
And you even just like notice it at the beginning of a session. If we start with a meditation,
Mm,
it just helps people get into the right mindset, I guess,
yeah.
to really take things on board. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And then another resource for, I guess, like working with your energy and developing your core,
mhm.
or maybe some more physical modalities like something like Pilates or the Alexander technique,
Yeah.
um, that kind of thing.
Mm,
I found that very helpful for strengthening, strengthening my core and learning to hold on to my energy.
mm,
Um, and so I think that is a great one.
mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, there were three really powerful ones there. So one is
Mm.
coaching, which I'm also like a big fan of, and I think it gives people that time and space to really explore, what's going on for them in their, as you mentioned, in their inner world. Um, yeah, I think that's great. And then meditation and mindfulness. Do you have well, I'll ask you that in a second, but yeah, meditation and mindfulness, and you mentioned kind of slowing down and quieting the thoughts, and yeah, I love that. And then some kind of embodied practice or movement. So Pilates or Alexander technique, I think can also be
Mm.
really powerful to connect to the body and what's going on in, physical sensations, and strengthen the core and do some exercise as well. So I think those are
Yeah.
fantastic resources for people to use. Yeah, do you have, the question that popped into my mind was, do you have a meditation practice that you do daily, or is it something that you've kind of used in your own, health and well-being?
Yes, I meditate every day.
Hmm.
Uh, Not necessarily for a long time,
Yeah,
but normally for 10 minutes
right.
every day, and then also just before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because on the days when I've got a lot on and I
Mm.
know it's going to be a really busy day, and it's almost like, oh, I don't have time to meditate, that's when I know I really need to meditate. And
Yeah.
I will make sure on those days that I start it with meditating. And it's amazing because it then helps me to really know, what my priorities are for the day,
Mhm.
and just approach it without this kind of sense of urgency and mind chatter.
Mhm.
It just makes me really centered
Mm.
and grounded. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not like that every day, I mean. I mean, I don't know if you meditate, but some days it's like, oh, that was a really lovely meditation, and other days it's like, oh, I couldn't really get into it. It's definitely, one of the principles of mindfulness and meditation is that beginner's mind. Like you come back to it over and over and start fresh
Mm.
each time, which is really lovely.
Yeah.
So yeah, the principles behind it I really love as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
great.
And
Yeah.
I guess another thing it's helped with actually is with that is with the inner critic,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of mindfulness and meditation practices that focus on self-compassion. So it's a good counter to this judge that we often have in our heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Yeah. Um, so I used to meditate more consistently, and then I kind of fell out of the habit. So it's something I need to get back into. Um,
Mm.
and I found one practice called circling, which is actually it's kind of a meditative practice in a group, where you join as a group, and then you kind of explore what's coming up for you in the present moment. So it's about presence in connection, whereas
Mm.
meditation, from what I understand, is presence in on your own, kind of a self exploration. This circling practice is about presence in connection with other people. So I found that quite an
Mm.
interesting one to explore. Um,
That does sound very cool.
yeah. Um, cool. So what do you have, three key takeaways for your clients or sensitive people that coming out of this conversation, or things on your mind that you could share?
Mm. First one is to learn about your energy. I think what gives you energy, what drains you of energy, so that the things that drain you of energy you can have less of. The things that bring you more energy, you can put more of that into your life.
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I think what goes along with that in terms of managing your energy is about developing your core, so that you can hold on to your energy.
Mm.
Because for me, that's been part of what I've been learning is, I would give away a lot of my energy to other people because I had a weak to non-existent core. So developing your core to hold on to your energy as well.
Yeah.
Second one would be boundaries. Learn about boundaries. And I guess just do a bit of an audit in your life, you know, where you think you maybe have weak boundaries, too rigid boundaries, or you feel like you've got a healthy balance. You know, look at how you use your time. You know, what are your mental boundaries like? Are you able to hold on to your opinions in the face of opposition? You know, your physical boundaries, you know, do you protect your personal space? And your emotions, are you able to hold on to what you're feeling and let other people feel their feelings, and so on? And work on those things if you need to. A third thing would be to embrace all your parts, because being a sensitive person is a gift, I think. Even though, you know, we're not always kind of getting that message. And I think we have to really kind of own all our parts and bring ourselves a lot of self-compassion. Yeah. Those are my 3 takeaways.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's great. Brilliant. Yeah. And so we're kind of coming towards the end of today's conversation. I wondered, is there anything else that I haven't asked about that you'd want to share, or anything kind of you feel that's missing from this picture, or have we covered what you feel is right for today?
I think maybe just to come back to that, being a sensitive person is beautiful and amazing, and, you know, allows you to like really deeply connect with other people and with the world and with nature, because, you know, we've talked a lot about some of the challenges that I frequently come across, but I think it's really important to see the beauty of being a sensitive person and the strengths as well. And so that you have that balanced picture. You know, we're always so easy to focus on the negative sometimes. And we need to have the balance, and sometimes focus on how we can make our strengths stronger and how we can use those, whilst also working on maybe, you know, areas that it would be helpful for us to work on.
Beautiful. Yeah, lovely way to end it. Thank you. I completely agree. I think, you know, building that as a sensitivity as a strength and as an asset, and as something that's you know, like you mentioned, a gift is really the way forward, because then the challenges start to diminish and really kind of reduce down, and the benefits are what you get to enjoy in life. Yeah, great. So Helen, where can people find you online and find out more or work with you?
Yeah, I'm on social media everywhere, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and so on. But probably the easiest place for people to find me is on my website, which is helensnape.com.
Perfect. Okay. Helen, thanks so much for today, for the conversation. It's been really powerful. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it too.
Great. Until next time.